All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Ready, camera.
And cue talent.
3, 2, 1.
Record.
Greetings and thanks for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we take a look at some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining me here in Los Angeles is stand-up comic Steven Cruiser, and right next to him is PJTV contributor Michelle Fields. The midterm elections are now history, and Republicans made history last night, regaining control of the Congress. So how will the results impact the 2016 agenda? And what are the big takeaways from the election? Our panel's here to answer that. We begin with Mr. Cruiser.
Moving forward, or for our MSNBC fans, leaning forward, the GOP majority needs to be strong in the face of the coming executive onslaught on issues like immigration reform. President Obama delayed an executive order to curb deportations until after the election. Chuck Todd went out and tweeted last night. He said, this kills Obama's executive action on immigration. I don't believe that for a second. I believe he's getting his executive action pen ready. He's probably got a whole bunch of them laid out right now to go forward on this thing. But what I think that the Republicans need to do is one thing we've learned since they first took over Congress again in 1994 is the rap has been they're very good in the opposition, they don't lead very well. And you need to lead with ideas. The whole, okay, we're not him stuff is over. That doesn't count now that they're leading. You can't just be less sucky than President Obama now. You actually have to have some ideas, fight things, and as we've discussed many times here, the majority of the public does not want immigration reform. So what remains to be seen right now is whether Mitch McConnell will be strong and remain as he was in the year previous to his election, or if he's going to do the Republican senator route and do an about-face now that he's safely ensconced for another 6 years.
Here's what I think. I think the Republicans should look for bipartisan compromise with the Democrats, but look for it in a different way than probably most people are thinking. One of the things that happened in the election is that red state Democrats and purple state Democrats got killed because they voted the way the president wanted them to vote when they knew their constituents didn't want it back home. Obamacare comes to mind first and foremost. Immigration is something that certainly is cut for the same cloth as Obamacare. So here's what I would do if I was Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. I would go to Joe Manchin. I'd go to Heidi Heitkamp. I'd go to Bill Nelson. I'd go to John Tester. These are Democrats who are scared to death right now. They know that if they vote with this president, that they're going to seal their own fate when they have to go back home and run for re-election. I would build a coalition of 60 senators around those people, and I would then put out a conservative agenda and a Republican agenda, and I would build a bipartisan coalition with those votes instead of going to the White House. I would almost treat Obama like he's totally irrelevant, like he's a complete lame duck, and say I'm doing it with bipartisan support.
That's very Reagan-esque of you going that route right there. It won't be bipartisan with Manchin because he'll be a Republican before daylight saving time comes back.
And the independent in Maine might caucus with Republicans.
Yeah, it might caucus with too. But Jim Manchin's, remember I asked you like 6 months ago, I said, why hasn't Joe Manchin flipped yet? He's going to flip now. But what do you think? Do you think that the president might now back off a little bit on immigration reform, or do you think he's going to whip that puppy out next week?
Oh, yeah. He wants it to be his legacy. And Politico has a good story, and ABC's John Kroll has one as well, where they talked to officials in the White House, top officials who spoke anonymously, that said that the president has no intention of changing his policies, changing the direction of his policies and what he wants to get done. He's going to tone down the language that he uses. He's going to tone down some of the rhetoric. But he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He wants to do what he wants to do, and he's going to get it done. He doesn't care that, which is crazy, because what an election is saying when you have all of these Republicans voted in, it's saying we don't like your policies, President Obama. We want something different. But the White House officials who spoke anonymously to ABC and Politico say, no, we don't care.
Had the Democrats had half the numbers that the Republicans did in winning last night, they'd be running around shouting mandate in the streets right now.
But, you know, here's the thing, though. This is not just going to cause friction between the White House and congressional Republicans. This is going to cause friction between the White House and congressional Democrats. And that's something that you can't ignore, because he needs those votes to get his agenda through, and he needs those people to carry his legislation. And if they're not going to cooperate with him, then he's in big trouble. He had a bad relationship with congressional Democrats prior to this election. Harry Reid staffers are already out blaming him for this disaster.
He's never had a good relationship with Congress, and I don't think that's going to change. I think he realizes that the American people hate Congress. I mean, if you look at the polls, they have such a high unfavorable rating, and then when you look at Obama, it's not that bad. So I think he feels like, whatever, the people aren't going to hate me as much as Congress. I'm going to push this all on Congress, big bad Congress, and say that it's not my fault, it's their fault.
For the sheer entertainment value of it, when I got home last night, I started to watch MSNBC. and they went to a public men's room and scraped Steve Schmidt off the floor and brought him in as the token Republican there. And all they were talking about around midnight last night was immigration reform. They're still trying to make this a thing. And he's a useful idiot Republican, so he's, of course, playing along with it. And they're still trying to make it seem like immigration reform has to be done. And what worries me, here's the thing that still worries me, is that was kind of part of that autopsy thing that we did after 2012, where too many people floating in the upper echelons of the Republican Party still think that immigration reform is a necessary thing. They're not paying attention to the people, and I'm afraid they might not pay attention to this election.
Time will tell. Michelle, what do you have for us?
All right, so it was a huge night for Governor Scott Walker, who won re-election. And now that he's won re-election, we have 2016 to think about. And now that he's won, he can start laying the groundwork for his presidential run. Do you think it's going to start very soon? Do you think he's probably thinking about it this week?
Probably not this week, but he's going to have to make a decision before too long, because the campaign for president really probably starts maybe sometime after the Louisiana runoff. So the clock is ticking louder and louder. I don't know if Scott Walker is going to be the Republican nominee, but I will say this today. I predict it will be a governor.
Well, I hope it'll be a governor. Here's what I hope with Scott Walker. I like him. You know, he's not the most dynamic personality, but he's also, as a friend of one of my friends last night, he said, of all the even keel guys, he's the one that doesn't annoy me. I like him. You know, he just cuts to it. He says what he needs to say. But I think that he could be the guy who can make money flow from the Tea Party side and the establishment side. I think both groups would be more than happy to align behind Scott Walker should he get serious about making a run, and that's what's most appealing to me about him. That and the fact that he just knocks the unions around like redheaded stepchildren.
Yeah, but I think his personality is going to be a hurdle. I mean, I think he doesn't connect with people the same way that Mitt Romney didn't. They just don't connect with the audience and the American people, and they're not charismatic on television. That's going to be a problem for him.
People need to like you if you're going to be president. That's a huge part of it. A lot of people said that Ronald Reagan was too conservative for the country. And when Ronald Reagan put his name on the ballot, they thought, all right, this is an easy re-elect for Jimmy Carter. Reagan kicked his teeth in. And in part, Reagan wasn't too conservative for the country, but he's also likable, and Jimmy Carter was a scold. And you can't discount the likability factor. My big takeaway from the election is the precarious future for Nevada Senator Harry Reid. The Democrat is now on thin ice, a direct result from the midterm election results. On Tuesday night, Reid's chief of staff openly criticized President Obama, suggesting he was partly responsible for the heavy Democratic losses. David Crone said, quote, "I don't think that the political team at the White House truly was up to speed," end quote. Another issue happened in the state of Nevada that's very important for the future of Harry Reid. The Republican candidate for lieutenant governor won his election. So now there's a Republican governor, a Latino Republican, Brian Sandoval, very popular. I think he won with 70+% of the vote. Yes. You have a Republican lieutenant governor who's a conservative and a solid guy. There are polls that show Brian Sandoval beating Harry Reid by double digits if he runs against Harry Reid next time around. He's not a Sharon Engel. He's not a Sue Loden. He's not a Tartanian. This guy is a real guy who's won statewide elections, who will go and will defeat Harry Reid if he's the nominee. Harry Reid is behind the proverbial 8 ball now. He's got to worry about keeping his leadership position in Washington, D.C. Then he's got to worry about winning his re-election back home, which he says he's going to run for. Where do you see Harry Reid going from here?
The thing that worries me about Harry Reid all the time is that when push comes to shove, big labor will shovel more money in Harry Reid's direction than they will in almost anybody else's. They get behind him, you know, the gaming interests and everything there. They throw a lot of money at Harry Reid that always helps him in the end. But right now, I'm still mystified as to how he ascended to the top.
Yeah, we were just talking about how important likability is. This guy is the most unlikable
He's
person.
a monotone mumbler. And
he looks like a mortician.
And he looks like the Crypt Keeper, if you want to go old school. But I'm still trying to figure out how he got to where he is right now. And as we all know, you don't get to the leadership position without banking a lot of favors, getting a lot of support, strong-arming a lot of people.
Well, his sons are basically running Nevada right now, which is a little suspicious.
I think right now my gut feeling is that if he loses the leadership, I think then he might go quietly into in the next election.
Michelle, there was another story in Politico right before the election. that Harry Reid anticipated losing seats, and he anticipated losing a lot of seats. And he let the other members, primarily Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin, who are the two that would theoretically replace him, that they better not come after him in his position in leadership. And if they do come after him, they better kill the king. Because if they don't kill the king, he's going to make their lives miserable and banish them to political Siberia. So he was already consolidating his power. Part of what makes Harry Reid so successful at winning re-elections to be leader of that caucus is that he's a master parliamentarian. Do you think that he'll be able to hold off a coup if Chuck Schumer or Dick Durbin come after him, or do you think he's that vulnerable right now?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think he does have a lot of friends in Congress behind closed doors. People will say that he's actually a very nice person and they like him. Republican senators, I've heard say that. But the thing is I feel like the American people don't like him. I mean, they realize that he has made the Senate a graveyard for legislation. He has not done anything. And he goes there and he says, oh, it's because Republicans, Republicans, Republicans. And it's him who's not putting legislation forward. They realize that he's not doing anything. But he does have a lot of the money of the unions. And he likes power. So I think he's going to try to keep it. But I think what he should do is just become a lobbyist, make tons of money. But I think he likes power too much that he won't relinquish it.
I think Durbin's got the best shot. Schumer's just arrogant and ridiculous, and he'll shoot himself in the foot. And Durbin's been making a lot of moves leading up to this election because he knew he would win to get himself out there, be more in the public. Every time I turn around, Dick Durbin's being quoted on something lately, and he's showing up for the interviews all the time right now.
Reid is in a very strange place for leadership because he's in a purple state and he has a near-death experience every time he's up for re-election. And he's lost a bunch of elections, too. He lost to be mayor of Las Vegas. He lost a race for the U.S. Senate. He's a guy who's not entirely made of Teflon.
But I think his colleagues fear him.
They do fear him. But look what happened to Tom Daschle. Tom Daschle lost re-election as a sitting majority leader.
Yep.
It could happen to Harry Reid, too.
It can happen, yes.
Hopefully, I'd like to see
There's
that.
recent historical precedent for it, and I just think, I don't know. He might be one of these guys, I think, that doesn't. I think he likes being in power. I don't think he likes it that much. I think at some point he's no Pelosi. Because Pelosi doesn't have to worry about re-election. She's going to get re-elected all. She doesn't have to work in an election. Shows up, gives a couple speeches, she's good. Harry Reid actually has to work every 6 years to get re-elected, as you said. And he might just, and what, he's 106
He says he wants to stay in the
right?
Senate until he's 85 years old.
Oh,
He's not 85 yet?
No.
Oh, I can't. I want to see his long-form birth certificate.
All right, that's going to do it for today's show. What are your thoughts on the midterm election results and how will this impact the GOP moving forward? Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips for Stephen Cruiser and Michelle Fields joining me here in Los Angeles. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.